Guten Tag, Lab. This is Mr. Liniger. Let's make history today as we go over Unit 1, Day A. But before we do that, let's get started and do our daily punishment. A man sued an airline company after it lost its baggage. Sadly, he lost his case. Lost his case. Clever. Key terms for today: feudalism, daimyo, shogun, samurai, sinification, Koguro Dynasty, Chan Buddhism, the Trung Sisters, Bushido, and Subuku. We're going to go over the political, economic, and social characteristics of Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. We'll talk about the characteristics of feudal Japan and the impact on sinification on all three of these countries. So let's first talk about the geography of Vietnam, Korea, and Japan. Korea and Vietnam were mountainous, cut by rivers and valleys. The populations were located on the plains. Japan was an island. It had volcanic islands, very mountainous, deep valleys with plains. For the demography, rice is going to be the principal crop in all three of these regions. We'll first start talking about Korea. The first Korean dynasty we'll talk about is the Koguro Dynasty. They conquered the previous dynasty, the Sia, in 935. They ruled until 1392. They were a tributary dynasty to the Chinese. They would offer and pay tribute to the Chinese. The word sinification means to become Chinese, and Korea will go through a large amount of sinifications. They'll borrow a lot of ideas that were useful, unavoidable. They will avoid some things that were not. They sent tributary embassies to China, including royal officials and scholars. They made a lot of their architecture based on the Chinese. They did keep some of their older traditions like ancestor worship. They trained some of their scholars in Confucian ideas that they got from previous Chinese dynasties. They did adapt Neo-Confucianism. They also got Buddhism from the Chinese, and they adapted and blended their own version of Buddhism with local Korean beliefs called Chan Buddhism. One of the big differences for Korea was in Korea, their aristocracy and royal houses had a lot of power, where in China, like the aristocracy really isn't as powerful anymore. The Confucian bureaucracy is really the social group that's very powerful, that and the emperor and his family. But in Korea, the aristocracy is still pretty powerful. Next one is Vietnam. Vietnam was ruled by the Chinese up until 983. In 40 to 43 CE, two sisters, the Trung sisters, led a revolt against the Chinese from Vietnam. Vietnam is going to spend 1,000 years trying to get independence. Vietnam has a history of not being taken over. They rebel against the Chinese when they try to take them over. They rebel against the French in the 1800s when they try to take them over. And they rebel against America during the Vietnam War when we were getting involved in Vietnam. The relationship between Vietnam and China was often tributary. The Chinese brought champa rice. The Vietnamese brought champa rice to the Chinese. Vietnam will become independent after 983. They'll be ruled by dynasties. They'll create the capital of Hanoi and Hue. There will be some big differences between the Chinese and the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese were the civilization that were least likely to accept sinification. In Vietnam, the village was the center of life, and the village was very important. It was equally important to how the family was very important in China. There were very few cities in Vietnam. They had a strong countryside ran by elders. Many Vietnamese retained their religious traditions, and women played a more prominent role in Vietnam. They could be head of households, own land, engage openly in business. They were often leaders in business. They're often leaders of villages, even at the national level, and there really was not foot binding in Vietnam. The Chinese influence on Vietnam was limited to really the elite in society. The elites will adopt Chinese bureaucracy, Confucianism, emperorship. They'll adopt Chinese script, literary, and artistic models. Mahayana Buddhism will come to Vietnam from China. Lastly, let's talk about Japan. Japan during this time will be going through a feudal system, feudalism. We talked about feudalism before in Western Europe. In Japanese feudalism, their version of the king is called the shogun. He's a military warlord that conquers all of Japan. Under him are like the nobles. They're called the daimyo. In Europe, we call them the nobles. Under them are the knights, and in Japan, they're called the samurai. And then you have the peasants. The big difference between Japanese feudalism and European feudalism is Japanese feudalism is going to be centralized. The countryside will be divided up into fiefs. The daimyos will be appointed by the shoguns. They will adopt Neo-Confucianism as a state philosophy. A lot of times the daimyos will vie for power against each other. They'll fight each other to try to become the new shogun. There was constant war during this time, as there might be a shogun for a lifetime, but then there's civil war afterwards. We're not going to get one family controlling the shogunate until the 1600s. The samurai are the lowest class of the aristocratic nobility. Their whole honor system was based on their honor code called Bushido, the way of the warrior, where like you fight for your lord, and if he dies, you die with him. And the Japanese did this ritualistic suicide, where it's better to commit suicide than be taken prisoner, called Subuku. For the Japanese during this time, women did have more rights compared to China. Under the Heian dynasty, which was before the shogunate period, women were the cultural and intellectual elite. They influenced dress and literature. They had great influence. There were some women that were empresses. Under the shogunate, women are going to lose considerable influence as Neo-Confucianism was introduced. Warfare will spread. Women could still be samurai and fight, but patriarchy will be getting stronger during this time. And right here shows a picture of Subuku, the ritualistic suicide. The samurai will take a small dagger and stab himself in the belly and cut downward so his intestines fall out. And his second will cut off his head while he does this. This is called Subuku. The actual cutting of the belly is harikiri. All right, and that's all I have for you for today, kiddos. Until next time, deuces. Deuces, yeah.